Return to the, there we go. So now Marjorie wants to, this is important. Let's see if we can do a share screen. Yeah, here it is. Okay, can you see this, Bruce?
Yep.
So this is this is on the website for Aleph Talks. It's on the tab that says blogosphere, whatever. But if you drill down on there, Mercury retrograde part 1, Mercury retrograde part 2 is what this is. And the key thing to keep in mind is here's the tree of life here on the left from the Kabbalah.
That's right.
The right, this is the right. And here on the left is what the Hindus use, which looks remarkably like this if you stare at the two for a little while. And then here is the tree of life with the serpent running through it. Let Marjorie talk. Okay, go ahead.
Well, we're going to be talking about the Kabbalah, and I just wanted to emphasize, well, people traveled around in those days. I don't think they were as limited and primitive as we like to think. You know, but the Phoenicians were great sailors, and
there was a Silk Road from, Rome had silk garments. They got the silk from China. The Silk Road went overland. It's still there, and I know people that have been on the Silk Road. And
can you get my bag?
It's
to the right.
It can be very dangerous even today. A lot of bandits that will stop you and get all your money.
Wow.
So there was a lot of interconnection that people somehow they think this is modern, that you have to get in an airplane to go somewhere, but
Right.
They ride a camel for 3 months, whatever.
Well, they knew how to use the stars. They had, sextants and things like that. They knew how to sail, and they knew how to row.
Right.
So this is just kind of by way of introduction to, well, it's my perspective as a Jungian that these things are archetypal, and that there are traces in different cultures and different religions. There's a theory that this all may have been one world religion at one point before they split off, and it seems as if different factions kind of adopted various emphases, but we feel on a mystical level they're saying very much the same thing or very similar. Sometimes the interesting thing is the differences, but we're talking about Mercury here, and the symbol for Mercury, where is it? Jump up.
Symbol for Mercury?
Yeah. Looks a lot like a caduceus.
There, is that it?
Well, there he's holding a caduceus in one hand. You see the two serpents and the wings of, probably esoterically it's a phoenix. And here's a larger version of that we're going to have framed in our dining room soon. But you see this, here's a hint that, and this is from very old patterns. This is the path that Mercury traces during the course of a year. And when it seems to go backwards, when it seems to go retrograde, that's, we think, where the idea of the pattern for the labyrinth came from. But That's not what I was looking for. That must be down here. These are from, this is from ancient Egypt, an image of two serpents facing pine cone, which represents the pineal gland. And this is something from the Freemasons in downtown Manhattan in a 1910 Beaux-Arts building known as the Whitehall building. Okay, here, this is the symbol for Mercury.
Oh, yeah.
You can see the similarity, right? It's a crescent on top of a circle on top of a cross, which most of the glyphs for the planets are composed of a combination of those. So here we have a more detailed look at the Hindu caduceus, which they talk about as representing the spine and the channel that goes along the spine, but it's not in the spine, the Shashamna. So it shows the two Kundalini channels, known as Ida is the yin channel and Pingala is the yang channel, spiraling around the central channel. All of this collectively is also known as the tree of life, and the roughly equivalent Hebrew system referenced in our Western Bible story of the Garden of Eden. This allegorical tale describes Eve, the feminine, initiating Adam into the fall from amniotic oneness, that's one of my terms, into the journey of individuation, the higher level of unity to be rediscovered in the process of healing the all-important illusion of separation or duality or the state of exile from the one. That's what the Jews, particularly the Kabbalists, are referring to, that exile isn't literally from the physical Israel, it's spiritually from the oneness. But they feel that that's a developmental stage that it's good to enter into and move through. The spiritual teaching is that this higher level of reunification is impossible without the loss and injury of the original separation. And a lot of religions refer to sin as a state of separation from the divine. And to me, the divine means the oneness, the ultimate oneness. And so that is an important developmental stage of spiritual growth. Recognition that in the fact that on the eve of the Hebrew Sabbath, 2 candles are lit and not just one. And that's why, as I've said, because all the magic happens with the separation. So here's a caduceus in the Hindu styling, showing each of the chakras as an energy center going up from the base is the root chakra. The second one is sacral, which represents sexual and other creative energy. The solar plexus is your sense of self or your ego. The heart chakra is giving and receiving love. The throat represents communicating, particularly your truth. And the third eye is the connection to the spirit realm and intuition with the higher self. And the crown chakra is said to be our most direct connection to universal God consciousness. And this is from the Hindu tradition. And here are the physiological correspondences of the body. They're said to relate to glands for the most part. So the root refers to the genitals, the testes, kidneys, and the spine, which is also the Shashamna, and the sacral is the bladder, prostate, ovaries, kidneys, gallbladder, bowel, and spleen. And this shows up a lot in health matters and Ayurvedic health, which is very similar to Chinese medicine. The solar plexus rules the intestines, pancreas, liver, bladder, stomach, upper spine. The heart is the heart and lungs. The throat is the bronchial tubes, vocal cords, all areas of the mouth, including tongue, and they consider the esophagus to be part of the mouth or in the throat or at the base of the throat. The third eye is the eyes, the pituitary gland, the pineal gland, which resembles the pine cone, and the brain. And then finally, the crown is the spinal cord and the brain stem. And I feel that this, looks like the top of a cross section of a brain. When you look at the labyrinth. But so here you kind of see the two serpents, right, coming up near the head area. And this is an ancient Egyptian thing from 1224 before the Common Era. And this is a 1910 Masonic representation. A lot of the United States was built by Masons. A lot of the high level commerce was initiated, so to speak, by them. Here we have, this is the rooftop of Grand Central Station, which is a real hub. I don't know how many people go through there just every day. And a lot of
100,000.
100,000.
A couple hundred
A
thousand.
couple hundred.
Like 300,000, 200, 300,000.
Wow.
And a lot of goods are shipped through there too. A lot of freight trains go through there.
Yeah, they're going to connect it now. Right now it's a terminus, but they're going to actually put it, there's unused tracks and they're activating the tracks so that it'll go directly. You'll be able to just have it as a stop, not a terminus, and continue on either, north or south, whatever you want to do.
Or I think they're trying to connect it with Penn Station too.
Yeah.
On the west side. This is on the east side. I used to go through there every day, and this is the ceiling of the main concourse, which has this zodiacal belt across the ceiling, and it's huge. You can see the size of the people here, and it was covered with, a lot of it was tar from cigarette smoke for decades.
And Jackie Kennedy pushed
Right.
to have all of this renovated and cleaned, but they kept a little smidgen. Let's see, this is from where we're standing, we're looking east here. And so if you would look up over your shoulder, so I go up here, over my shoulder, up here on the ceiling, so you can't see this, obviously. They kept a little smudge of what it was like to see how much, and then they examined it, and it was all tobacco. It was all cigarettes and pipes and cigars. It was just unreal.
Brown. It's just a disgusting brown.
Yeah. And all of this was just dingy. This has all been cleaned up, and there's a huge where I am here going out here. No, the tracks are out there. Where's the food emporium?
Yeah, that's up on these balconies. Now this is an Apple store.
That's the biggest Apple store
where we're
that
looking
Apple
from,
has.
where the photographer is standing, is another balcony at the other end, and that's a really nice restaurant bar. And then along here, there's lots of shops now that are very nice. I thought you were going to say this is an escalator that goes up to what
It goes up to, it used to be called the Pan Am Building.
Yeah.
Somebody bought it and changed the name to, I forget what the name is now.
But there was a big helicopter pad, intersection there. So this, connects the whole East Coast, and it connects to Penn Station on the other side of town. So then this is the clock up above it. Just look at all this esoteric astrology, symbolism. And this
But this is looking out at Park Avenue.
This is actually over 42nd Street, and the Park Avenue splits kind of and goes
Right.
around the whole building.
Right,
And this is at that
got it, right.
division point. So he's kind of presiding over the whole building in this
Yeah,
beautiful way. All this I think is just gorgeous, Beaux-Arts stuff, and I just love the symbolism. So here we see the caduceus again. And this is what they're talking about. They're talking about energy. They're not talking about snakes in the garden. They're talking about raising your kundalini and being aware of it. That's what that whole story is about. So here you see the two serpents and the Ida and the Pingala and the energy going in the Taurus. Very clearly, you see that pathway of the energy. And so a Taurus is a simple way to describe a Taurus is a donut, or it also really looks like an apple. So here's a clearer representation of the tree in a kind of very simplified format, with a bolt of lightning coming down from above, and then the path of return is the serpentine path. And so here I just wanted to show the connection between Mercury and Virgo. Also has to do with healing. And it's the second sign that Mercury represents or corresponds with. And most people just talk about Gemini. So the Virgo connection is kind of more esoteric, and it's association with healing. So back. So this model of the 7 chakras at the left originates in the Hindu spiritual tradition, which considers these energy centers to be the basis of our human existence. It can be said that the Holy Spirit, also known as chi energy in Asia, or more generally, life force energy, travels from the crown chakra at the tops of our heads, right here, down through the body to the base of our, to the base of our spines, through the spine, and back up in a circle toward the crown chakra again. This forms what is known as a torus vortex in quantum physics, and looks like a lot like an apple if you think about it. So here we have the apple in a torus. In the ancient Hebrew Kabbalah diagram of the energy, known as the tree of life, the topmost, they call it a Sephirot, which means sphere, is known as the crown Sephirot. So there had to be some cross-pollination. They I think had to be talking to each other, but I think it's also archetypal. So their energy diagram above here in this beautiful piece of jewelry, which I would love to have one, and here in this more traditional medieval representation of the tree of life. Esoterically, its depiction in spiritual teachings also reference serpent energy, basically akin to Kundalini. It is clearly a very similar parallel, but ultimately also unique paradigm of the human energy body that has been handed down verbally and then written in written form for many generations. The multifaceted schematic is used by initiates in traditional spiritual teachings, profound meditation practices, and energy healing. And over the millennia, different versions have become available to Christian and other practitioners, including medieval alchemists and modern day occultists such as the Freemasons. So something I like to emphasize is that in the West, a lot of our mystical underpinnings of our religious expressions are split. There's a division between the esoteric mystical side and the exoteric, everyday, mainstream side. And that's true in Christianity and Judaism. But it's less true in the East. It's less true of the Hindus and the Buddhists. And also like the Sufis are not that different from the mainstream Muslims. So the energy at the top of the tree, representing on one level the top of the head, is also referred to as the crown in Kabbalah, or translated to Hebrew, it's Keter. To the right, if we see another confluence of symbolism and meaning with the Sanskrit symbol for the heart chakra and the Magen David in Hebrew. So this is a Sanskrit diagram or symbol of the heart chakra, which is here, the green one, in Sanskrit, but it's the very same symbol, which incidentally also represents fire. The upper point triangle is fire, and the downward point triangle is water. So its torus vortex consists of a central axis with a vortex at both ends. See here. Surrounding coherent field. Energy flows in one vortex through the central axis and out the other, and then wraps it around itself to return to the first incoming vortex. The simplest description of its overall form is that of a donut, though it takes many different shapes depending on the medium in which it occurs. This can happen in water or any number of things. So here you can see this is a larger pattern. It's known as the seed of life, and you can make out, it's easier to see here, the tree of life superimposed on this pattern. So it's thought that this is where it comes from. And you see this pattern all over the world. Definitely in the Islamic and Hindu temples. They make a lot of use of this in their tiles and things like that. So in the Jewish tradition, the Kabbalistic tree of life, overlapping the flower of life, represents the 10 Sephirot or spheres or aspects of God. And I like the way the Jewish people spell God as G-blank-D to make it clear you're referring to the great mystery. You're not referring to a man on a chair on a cloud. But that's who's described in the Kabbalistic Book of Splendor. It also represents us. So it is said to function as a hologram, representing the macrocosm of the universe on the highest level, and the human form as the microcosmic expression of the same divine principles. It is striking that the ancient Egyptian caduceus, the Hindu traditions in yoga, meditation, and any other metaphysical traditions, as well as the Western system inherited from Rome and Greece and the Middle East, including Hebrew, Kabbalah, all refer to the same energy body, whether it is conceived of and articulated as the caduceus, or the rod of Asclepius, or the biblical tree of life. They all make reference to the energy channel along the spine, known as the Sushumna in Sanskrit, which includes the 7 chakras, or the related central Sephirot on the Hebrew tree of life, and their traditional symbols for health and healing. The fundamental human chakra system, as it is commonly accepted, consists of 7 energy centers arising from the base of the spine to the crown of the head. So this will be just a backdrop to what Bart is going to lead us through.
Right. So now let's go back and we're going to do a quick review of what we did last time. which is here. Can you see this, Bruce?
Yep.
Okay, so again, we're doing an introduction to the Kabbalah. So here we go. This is what we covered last time. What is it? It's essentially both a way of viewing the world and a way of living in the world. And it gives you a blueprint of the organizational structure of all life everywhere. And so we'll go through this. Here we've got this Vitruvian man here that we talked about. This is what Leonardo da Vinci came up with here. And you can see the tree of life, would fit into this.
And his thing of squaring the circle.
Right.
He was obsessed with that.
Right. So we're born from nothingness, we return to nothingness, and our voyage of eternal life is mapped in the tree of life. And so then we just ran through some background here. This is the most mystic set of esoteric teachings in Judaism, explain the relationship between the unchanging eternal God, the mysterious Ein Sof, the infinite, and the mortal finite universe, which is the creation of God. And it forms the foundation of the mystic religious interpretations within Judaism, which many Jews are not familiar with, if you ask them about this. So the Kabbalists developed their own texts and transmitted this down through the ages. No one knows when it first came about, but it was clearly, it could have gone back to Moses or whatever. But it really came into its own in terms of being popularized in the 12th and 13th century in Spain and southern France. And this was the Jewish communities there. There were, in Spain, they were in the Ottoman Empire. And this led to going back to Palestine and having a lot of activity there. So the Zohar, which is the main foundational text of the Kabbalah, was actually written down in the late 13th century. Probably pieces of it were oral way before this. So this complements the Torah, which is the Old Testament, and the Talmud, which is the interpretation of the Torah.
And yet again, there's a different Kabbalistic interpretation of the Torah. And remember my point. My teacher, my Kabbalah teacher, felt that particularly the creation story was from an older, even pre-Hebrew tradition. That the quote unquote Old Testament, so the Torah was tacked on to this older version, or this older story was tacked on to. It just doesn't really belong with the rest of it. And it's very similar to other, we would call them mythologies. We don't like it when we say that about our Judeo-Christian tradition, but it's a mythology. But that it's extremely universal, and I think that's because of what we just looked at before, of what it's representing. It's talking about creation at the most fundamental level, and I think it's really talking about yin and yang, and those are the two, poles of DNA.
Just a sec, I have to go do one thing. I'm sorry. It looks like the people that we're dealing with on a scamming thing are also part of this whole scamming. Hold on one sec while I get to.
Or what they make as a class.
Right. Huh.
What, getting a notice?
Yeah, I got a notice to go disconnect their software.
It's just what we need. We're gonna just be destroyed into a fine powder.
Hold on.
Can we come up there to live with you, Bruce, in Canada?
Well, you're on a PC, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm on a Mac. We don't have those kind of problems.
Good for you. I'm a Mac person. Well, Bart really is too, he says.
Yeah, no, I've used both over the years. I'm just looking to see. I don't see that it got installed here. That's what is throwing me off.
Well, maybe they don't broadcast it in any obvious way. I just love looking at these images myself.
Just a second, I'm going to do one thing, which is go here and no, I'll have to do it after class. I don't see it. I'll sort it out. So let's go back to,
We have nothing left to lose.
no. Okay, so here we had this significant individual, Isaac Luria, who many consider to be the father of contemporary Kabbalah. And he popularized it with Hasidic Jews who ran with it. And that continues to be, an area of active study and so forth. But the main thing is there's a set of these teachings under Kabbalah, which include the Zohar that was put together, we said, in the 13th century, and then a bunch of these other things that also are there, and collectively they all make up what is Kabbalah. The earliest writings was actually just a brief document of only a few pages, and it just had an alphanumeric vision of cosmology. So that was really the prelude to any of the real heavy duty stuff. So most people would look at the Zohar and these 4 levels that came up here, we talked about last time, the simple level, the level that goes through allegorical meanings rather than this direct interpretation, the midrash, the rabbinic meanings with all kinds of comparisons, and then the highest level, the innermost esoteric metaphysical meanings, sod, or secret, or mystery. So you have to, end up working through these 4, and there are a whole bunch of people that are studying all this stuff on and on everywhere. I'm just going to skip over this because we don't need it for tonight. But this is, this is what Margie was talking about. Some people claim Kabbalah dates from Eden. It came down from a remote past. as a revelation to elect righteous people,
Sadiqim,
tzaddikim,
and they're considered to be like the mystics.
right? And so these are only a very select few, and one should not teach the work of creation in pairs or the work of the chariot to an individual unless he is wise and can understand the implications himself. So contemporary scholarship, just suggests that there's different schools of esotericism that arose at different periods in the history of Judaism, and you can surprisingly get different answers. The Kabbalah was an integral part of the oral Torah given by God to Moses on Mount Sinai in the 13th century BC, but some believe Kabbalah began with Adam, and so it goes. Let's see. So we touched on this. Yeah, the goal here in this journey is to maintain a neutral path. You can touch the extremes, but you want to stay in the middle while things are going on. And this is a never-ending journey. Our soul becomes crystallized light in conception. After some time, we experience what we call death, where our physical body becomes dust again. At the moment of death, we leave our physical shell only to eventually return for the voyage once again. And so the cycle starts over. So reincarnation is an integral part of this Kabbalah. Anything you wanted to hit on here? I'm just looking. We ran over this last time. So, the mystical things like Jacob's ladder is what you come across. Moses encounters a bush that's burning but isn't consumed. And he's talking with God with this burning bush.
And there's these, supposed two trees. One is the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but that's a polarity. And then the tree of life. I kept saying to my teacher, I think they're the same tree. I think they're the same tree for years in our class on different levels,
Mm-hmm.
And finally, he was studying with a rabbi who finally got around to that. That's what it said. But then it was true, but I was saying it all along. It's the same tree.
Just
On one level, you see it as this polarity between good and evil and black and white. And then on the other, it's all just life.
right. So we have God in essence, absolutely transcendent, unknowable, limitless, divine simplicity beyond revelation. That's in the essence, the transcendent side. Then God in manifestation, the revealed persona of God through which he creates, sustains, and relates to humankind. So the first is this Ein Sof, the infinite or endless or no end. And this cannot be grasped. This is unknowable. But the second aspect is accessible to human perception through spiritual and physical existence and reveals the divine immanently. And this is what's bound up in the life of man. So these two aspects are not contradictory. They complement one another. And the concealed mystery from within the Godhead is mystically revealed through various emanations.
Well, I like that last sentence, that they're not contradictory, but complement one another as emanations, mystically revealing the concealed mystery from within the Godhead. To me, that's a really good sentence.
Yeah. And then the Ein Sof itself is too sublime to be referred to directly in the Torah. So it isn't. It's not in the Torah. It's not a holy name. as no name could contain a revelation of Ein Sof because it's unknowable, and even terming it no end is an inadequate representation of its true nature, with the description only bearing its designation in relation to creation. So the Torah does narrate God speaking in the first person, most memorably the first word of the Ten Commandments, which is a reference without any description or name to the simple divine essence, beyond even the duality of infinite versus finite. So Ein Sof describes the Godhead as an infinite life source, continually keeping all creation in existence.
And the creation is always unfolding from within itself. It's not something that happened, 5,000 years ago, or whatever the teaching is, or 50 billion years ago. It's happening every minute.
Right. So here we have the Zohar again,
Rishi.
and the Rishi, the beginnings, the Ein Sof created Elohim, which is God's manifestation in creation. And then at the beginning, there was a spark of blackness that emerged in the sealed, within the sealed, beyond the mystery of Ein Sof, a mist within matter implanted in a ring, no white, no black, no red, no yellow, no color at all. And when he measured with the standard of measure, he made colors to provide light. And within the spark in the inmost part emerged a source in which the colors are painted below. It's sealed among all the sealed things of mystery of Ein Sof. It is penetrated, yet did not penetrate its air, was not known at all until from the pressure of its penetration, a single point shone, sealed, supernal. And beyond this point, nothing is known, so it is called Rishi, the beginning, the first word of all. So here you see, this is a very different notion of creation here. And the emanation, the emanations are described, we touched about the Sephirot and the parts of whom, the divine faces and the divine attributes. There was this or, for spiritual light and flow, the different names of God in the supernal Torah, the Alamo or spiritual worlds. There's a divine tree, an archetypal man, angelic chariot and palaces. We didn't touch on that. Male and female in clothed layers of reality, inwardly holy vitality and external shells.
Klipot.
And what are kitty pot?
Shells.
Shells, okay.
It's like a walnut. There's the shell of the
Oh, I see, okay,
illusion of reality, and then the kernel is the essence.
right,
But
Right.
even that's like a kind of a known to be false distinction, because
right.
it's all essence. But
Then we have these limbs of the king, 613 of them, and then the divine souls of man. So these are all symbols that describe different levels and aspects of this divine manifestation, using anthropomorphic symbolism. So with that, I think Sephiroth are the 10 emanations, which we saw in this tree of life. Here's the abstraction of it. The Zohar elaborate on the emergence of the Sephiroth from the state of concealed potential in Ein Sof. And God emanated the myriad details of finite reality out of absolute unity, a divine light, via the 10 Sephiroth or vessels. And so
that's a nice explanation. It's like refraction. You could see the physical universe as this refracted image of the true reality,
right.
which is absolute and total unity.
Now we have the 10 Sephiroth in each of the 4 worlds. So what are the 4 worlds? Earth, air, water, fire.
Yeah.
And so they each contain the 10 Sephiroth, which themselves contain 10 Sephiroth, and so on. It's nested. And they emanate from the creator so that they can create the universe.
It's really holographic. You know, it's really like fractals, you know,
Right.
in their understanding of it, or their I don't think it's what they really think is really true. It's just a way to talk about it that is a paradigm.
Yeah. Well, the 10 Sephiroth match, though, these 10 compactified dimensions
Right,
that Ron Cowan observed.
right.
And so, you know, the ability to discern that is phenomenal, to see into the microcosm that there are these compactified dimensions that really contain a lot of the control and what happens in the world around us. And the other observations that Ron made about you know, information scanning and the structure of everything. You know, it's this really
And
is
also his dialogues with that English Kabbalist.
yeah, with the yeah, who was
We have a unit.
the guy, Bruce, the guy who came and visited from England? He was
Phillips? No,
Yeah.
Phillips, yeah,
yes,
Stephen
exactly.
Phillips, yeah. Yeah, you know, so you have here, this is all done with people that have no framework or metaphors or structure as in Western science, but Ron Cowan and Phillips, and so did, you know, Annie Besant and Charles Leadbeater and so forth, had this sort of Western science structure, so they could see what was going on and attach labels to it. Here they didn't have that, so they're winging it. They're just trying to describe something that, you know, it's hard enough today with a lot of high-powered mathematical techniques to begin to describe this. You know, this to me is really an amazing accomplishment that they got this far. So they're
Well,
real.
maybe we're winging it nowadays.
Yeah, maybe we're off the tracks. The real human actions are the foundations, the yesod of this universe, Malchut, and these actions must accomplish the conscious intention of compassion, and the compassionate actions are impossible without faith, emunah, meaning to trust that God always supports compassionate actions, even when God seems hidden. So it's necessary to show compassion towards oneself in order to share compassion toward others. And the selfish enjoyment of God's blessings is there not only in order to empower oneself and in this, but to consider as a kind of a golden mean, again, where you're trying to be in the middle, balancing between the extremes in the tree of life. And then we had this Partsufum, Partsufim, making reference to the male and female Partsufim, which are displacing the Sephirot, the manifestations of God, in particular anthropomorphic symbol personalities based on biblical esoteric exegesis and midrashic narratives. And the Lurianic Kabbalah places these at the center of our existence rather than the 10 Sephiroth, which Luria saw as broken in divine crisis. You know, what Ron observed, again, there were these 18 compactified dimensions with 8 holes, so they were connected in 10 dimensions, but you could view that as broken, that there's 8 holes there. You know, so what's going on? Where did the holes come from? You know,
They talk about shattering. They talk about it shattering.
Yeah, well,
That its first emanation disconnected. There weren't the connections between the Sephirot. So it was bringing down more energy than it could handle, than it could
Mhm.
contain. So everything overloaded. It was like a big short
Right.
circuit and shattered. So they're saying the first universe
It was a mess.
was broken, and it's broken into shards.
Mhm.
And the human task is to
And well,
pick up these shards and return it, to
Yeah,
kind of
well,
glue it back together as a
the
repair,
other
and that's
interpretation
really
is
beautiful.
that the shards themselves each are universes, and you know,
Right.
and that they're doing their thing, and we happen to be in one of those shards, one of those universes.
Right.
So you know, no matter how you cut it, it's amazing that they even came up with this.
But they say that we have this job, which is tikkun, Tikkun, to help with the repair,
Right, right,
which is a kind of touching
right.
notion.
So the Hasidic thought holds that God is all that really exists, everything else being completely undifferentiated from God's perspective. And so you could view this as an acosmic, monistic pantheism. God's existence is higher than anything that this world can express, but he includes all things of this world in his divine reality and perfect unity. So the creation affected no change in him, and so it goes. So you know, this gets into, again, very mystical concepts. The notion of evil or origin is, again, the negativity enters into the essence of the absolute. How could you have a God that is evil? Is they're asking this question: what's going on here? Uh, but this evil needs to be what it is to exist, uh, so that there can be this balance, and they go through, uh, you know, I'm sure, incredible cartwheels discussing this. The root of evil found within the 10 holy Sephirot through an imbalance, where you're not going down the middle, where you've gone too far toward one extreme or the other, and so in that sense, that's what evil is. So I'm just trying to skip ahead to the stuff we wanted to cover. 613 mitzvah are embodied in the organs and soul of man. Um, uh,
And
there's
this rectification, this notion of rectification of the exile. That's what happened when it shattered, when the first
right,
creation overloaded, it shattered and created these shards. That's one of the tasks of the Sabbath, is to recover the shards and raise them. And you do that by, you know, not really worshiping, but honoring and raising up the feminine,
hmm
which is really interesting.
hmm
And that's the last Sephirot on the tree of life, is the hidden divine within the mundane, within the earth element. But that's where so much of it resides. It's like saying the proof is in the pudding. It's the ultimate result of things, and that's where the divine. So it's another way of saying our desires and intentions are divinely inspired in the first place, and when we practice ours, it's coming from the divine unity. You know, my teacher would really refer to God, he would refer to the unity, but that we're repairing the unity when we use our volition and our inspiration and our desires. Those are emanations from the unities
Right.
desire for reunification. But without the separation, there's nothing to reunify. And that's seen as a kind of repair.
Right.
That we are necessary for.
So the Kabbalah posits, and it actually goes through how incarnation and disincarnation occurs. So the soul has three elements, and it's the basic one, the nephesh, is found in all humans and enters the physical body at birth. I asked,
and animals.
Yeah, and animals too. I asked Ron, how does this happen? And he just said, look, it's really complicated. That was it. But how do you get out of it? He said, well, when you get out of it, it's also really complicated. So let's talk about something else. Okay. So this is the source of one's basic physical, psychological nature. And this is where you're at your moment of when you get attached, you're at birth. This is when your natal birth chart kicks in, when you're attuned to these different archetypes that are out there to a lesser or greater extent. And you'll be evolving or developing over life. The other two parts of your soul can be developed over time. They're not implanted at birth, but they depend upon your actions and beliefs or your individualization. And you only fully exist in people that are awakened spiritually or have achieved enlightenment. So they talk about, this animal part, lower part, nephesh, which is provided at birth, the middle soul, or the spirit, with moral virtues, the ability to distinguish between good and evil, neshama, the super soul that separates man from other life forms related to the intellect and allows man to enjoy and benefit from the afterlife, to have some awareness of the existence and presence of God. Chaya, the inner part, the part of the soul allows one to have awareness of divine life force itself, and Yehida, the highest plane of the soul in which one can achieve as full a union with God as possible. So some people, mystics, again, they'll say, well, there are these different spirits out there. So the nephesh is one spirit, and the ruach and the neshama and so forth. You have a bunch of spirits, and you probably have even more than just these assorted things that you tune into that are just noise. Who knows what it's due to? Could be other souls even. But it's an incredible taxonomy that they've got here. This is to come up with this in the middle of the desert is amazing.
Well, and it corresponds to so much with the four elements. And you see it in alchemy, and you see it in
Right.
All the Western esoteric traditions, astrology and so on are based on it. They're talking, that's what they're talking about, the elements. The elements are really styles of energy. It's not an element.
Right.
That's a symbolic description. The fire is like fire.
Right. Yeah, the other thing is just this notion of reincarnation that Judaism doesn't really play this up, or in fact, there are Jews that don't even realize that Judaism encompasses this notion of reincarnation. But they just call it cycles of the soul, Gilgul, Neshamot. It doesn't appear overtly in the Torah, and the Kabbalists went and looked at different spiritual passages in reference to this, and they said, if you believe in reincarnation, then this explains what's going on here, and that was why this carried the day, because it was implicit but not explicit, and that was good enough. So we touched on this tree of life. Is there anything you want to say here? Let's see.
This is
Yeah, notice this, it's not simply dimensions, it's actually multidimensional. Okay, and so this is where, again, seeing these 10 Sephiroth, again, what Ron saw was 18 compactified dimensions with 8 holes. So this is really a multidimensional universe that's there, that they saw, that are all interconnected, and that's what controls everything.
And each Sephirot contains a whole tree, an infinite number of trees within it.
So,
and that's why there's a teaching in Kabbalah that everybody's on their own tree,
right,
and in their own level of the 4 worlds and all of that. And so you can't really judge. It's not a competitive sport,
right,
climbing up the ladder or something. In terms of, I've even had clients say this to me themselves. And you can be way ahead of the pack, in terms of intellectual development, but way behind in terms of love, and vice versa, in terms of your development. So the idea is to bring it all together and synthesize it.
right.
But we're not just meant to be that big jar of mayonnaise either. We're supposed to differentiate.
Right. So, we're somewhere in the tree of life at any moment. We move from moment to moment to another place in the tree of life. And this is always a personal journey. Everyone does it though. And so you learn to understand yourself, your relationships, your individuation, and how you relate to our planet and our cosmos and the creator of all that is. So, here we've got a physical representation of this step down process through the Sephirot, where a differentiated spectrum appears. And this begins with a Keter. Want to say anything on this?
Well, we talked about this last time we went over it. It strikes me as almost like this machine, and that's kind of a problem in Kabbalah. It should be like a dogma or an object, but it's a model, it's a paradigm, and it's talking about the step down from the absolute oneness into the realms of relativity, which is division. It's dividing from the oneness. The Enself is the oneness, but creation is an act, whether it's within itself or within us, of division from the unity.
Right.
And that means also subtraction. It's division and subtraction, not addition and multiplication.
Right. So this is definitely not a stagnant process. It's dynamic, it's ever changing. We're bouncing all over the place and so forth. And keeping in mind the picture of the macrocosm and the microcosm, as above, so below, one and the same, that's what's really governing everything. But the scales are just incredibly different. I guess the thing that they attach here is the left side is feminine, the right side is masculine, the left side is negative charge, the right side is positive charge, etc. But those are just words.
Passive and active, but in different ways. Each is both. So.
Right. Each of the Sephirot is associated with a divine attribute, name, pillar, one of the 5 worlds, 5 elements, letter of the name of God, Yahweh, the number of an archangel, on and on. Phillips was really good at trying to milk the geometrical implications out of all of this stuff. Incredible amount of, the problem with doing that is you start to wonder after a while if you're fooling yourself, if all of these relationships in these numbers are actually, driven by something, or if they just happen to fall out this way for some crazy reason. You see patterns where there are no patterns. But anyway, the human DNA can be superimposed on the tree. So that suggests the DNA is really the blueprint of individual life. And, we run through DNA every day. And this finally gets us to where we stopped last time, which is the Tzimtzum and where did the universe come from? Now, Ron went back to the start of this universe by drawing on the memories of these different mind forms that he could link up to. And so by going, they each have complete memory going back to the start of the universe and beyond that, to the universe that was before it. And so that's where he came up with this notion of a bounce occurring. There wasn't any bang, any fireball, but the thing that he couldn't do was he couldn't go back, several cycles of the universe, go back to the beginning, which is what is being talked about here.
Read that last paragraph. Don't skip that.
The Tzimtzum, the constriction or concentration, this is where there's literally nothing. And so then God goes through this act of contracting his infinite light. So by doing so, there's a void because now the light isn't there. And so this allowed the emergence of an independent existence that was separate from God, that wouldn't become nullified by the pristine infinite light. And it was reconciling the unity of Ein Sof with the plurality of creation, that many different things are going to be created here now by doing this. So just because there's one void, there could be many universes here that are being created, okay? Which I think is what Ron did sense. So this changed the creative act into one of withdrawal to create this, which was the antithesis of what would be called divine will.
The ultimate divine will.
Oh, the ultimate divine will, right?
The final, expression of it all is unity. But if you just start and stop there, then there's nothing.
Right.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
But then we don't get to have what our existence.
Right. No, we wouldn't be here doing this. So this new emanation after the Tzimtzum shone into the vacuum began creation. But this led to an initial instability called chaos, leading to a new crisis of shattering the Sephirot vessels. So here we go. The shards of the broken vessels fell down into the lower realms, animated by remnants of the divine light and causing primordial exile within the divine persona before the creation of man. Exile and encloakment of higher divinity within lower realms throughout existence requires man to complete the tikkun olam, the rectification process. The rectification above corresponds to the reorganization of the independent Sephiroth into relating parts of Fim, the divine personas, personally referred to obliquely in the Zohar. And from the catastrophe stems the possibility of self-aware creation and also impure shells, Kelly-Pot, a previous medieval Kabbalah. So the metaphorical anthropomorphism of the parts of Fim accentuates the sexual unifications of the redemption process, while the Gilgul reincarnation emerges from the scheme, and uniquely Lurianism gave the formerly private mysticism the urgency of messianic social involvement. So a lot to chew on here.
That's a mouthful, yeah.
But you can see that this existence, this God, is doing this in part to create something else and to learn. You know, you're sitting there as God, and nothing's really going on. There simply is nothingness. And so why not create something? So this entity created many universes, and they all are going to go their own ways and develop life in their own ways, and
Consciousness.
consciousness will arise, you know, and so forth.
But
So
it was really so that it could see itself. So it said that the universe is and that means that all the multiverses and every level of them, whether they're material or not, it's a mirror for the divine,
right,
to experience itself.
right. So Luria argued that the catastrophe stemmed from the unwillingness of the residue imprint after the Tzimtzum to relate to the new vitality that began creation. So there was this catastrophe, and you had to shake this chaos out. So the process was arranged to shed and harmonize the divine infinite with the latent potential of evil. And the creation of Adam would have redeemed existence, but his sin caused new Sephirot of the divine vitality, requiring the giving of the Torah to begin messianic rectification. And the historical and individual history becomes the narrative of reclaiming exiled divine sparks. And so it goes. So Tzimtzum, this contraction or constriction or condensation, explains God began this process by contracting his infinite light, his Ein Sof, in order to allow for this conceptual space in which finite and seemingly independent realms could exist. So all of these universes appear to be finite, but they're all going through these cycles of expanding and then contracting, expanding and contracting. This primordial initial contraction, this is the first go round, formed a vacant space into which this new creative light could beam. And it was noted, this is what's called Tzimtzum. So it gives rise to the paradox of simultaneous divine presence and absence of divine presence within the vacuum and the resultant creation. And then how do you resolve this paradox, and what in the world is going on here? But it's a great question to ask. I have no idea how you could do this experiment, like restart the universe. Is not what this is. This is restart from nothing, from a void. So you know, good luck in trying to figure out how to crank that up. The Tzimtzum results in empty space. The spiritual and physical worlds and ultimately free will can exist, and God can exist in it. Let's see. They're progressive diminutions of the divine or light from realm to realm in creation are also referred to in the plural as secondary tzimtzumim, innumerable condensations, veilings, or constrictions of the life force. And these subsequent concealments are found in earlier medieval Kabbalah. And so what I think is going on here from looking at this is there's an evolution of this initial chaos of the universe, and it splits and breaks and goes through this process again and again until finally you get down to something that's stable. And that's where I think this notion of multiverse comes from, that now there's many universes, not just one, and they're all doing their own thing, but they're all stable. We finally have gotten rid of the chaos in all of this. That's my interpretation of what might be said here. But this then takes you on to prior to creation, which is what's unknowable. There was only or Ein Sof, filling all existence. And afterwards, there was the creation of these worlds, and the emanations of this due to this contraction at the center. And in restricting that light, he distanced to the side surrounding a central point. So there was a void, a hollow, empty space. There had never been an empty space because he was everywhere. And so after the Tzimtzum, he drew down a single straight line of light from the light surrounding the void from above into the void. And it chained down, descending into the void. And in the space of that void, he emanated, created, formed, and made all the worlds. The thing that's interesting about this, he used the term light. And the one thing that Ron observed was photons run around in all the dimensions. They're not bound into any one, subspace. They do their thing everywhere. So it's interesting that they talked about light doing this. At least I thought it was interesting. A commonly held understanding is the concept requires a built-in paradox that God be simultaneously transcendent but also immanent. So on the one hand, if the infinite God did not restrict itself, then nothing could exist because everything would be overwhelmed by God's totality. So existence requires God's transcendence. But on the other hand, God continuously maintains the existence of, and it is not absent from, the created universe. God is everywhere.
This is like my personal favorite part of Kabbalah.
So
this
here I go with what
paradox.
Ron saw, which was all the compartments of space are coated with these information blocks that are constantly scanning what's all around them. And if they detect any changes, then they act according to the algorithms that they have to be able to do this. So on the one hand, God is everywhere, and on the other hand, he's not overwhelming everything. It's possible for all of these things to evolve in each of these separate universes, and so it goes. So this divine life force, which brings all the creatures into existence and may be present within them, if it were to forsake any creative being for even a brief moment, it would revert to a state of utter nothingness as before the creation. So God gives this force to all creatures. This force gives them their limits so that their material substance could be infinite and with the nature for original providence. So here you have, this notion of a soul or the spirits, however you want to view these things, linking up with all of these different creatures, and so it goes.
I love the way that's put there, that you need the finiteness to have the actuality.
Right.
These things could have material substance. They need finiteness to have existence. Otherwise, they're lost in the oneness and the void, the nothingness.
Right.
And in that way, I think it's the way that they relate to space, infinite space and potential. I think there's a kinship between Kabbalah and Buddhism.
Right. And this is, to me, amazing that they could meditate and come back with these interpretations of what they saw going on here.
So every step in the tree is a limitation. It's another degree of limitation. They say,
right.
So that you could have an actual chair and not just a potential chair.
Yeah. Yeah. The notion, any one of these universes we're talking about, they've always been held to be finite. They're gigantic in extent, and they continue, many of them, to expand before they contract. But none none of them are infinite. What is infinite is the multiverse that contains all of the universes. and so that's something that's hard to comprehend, holding all these things.
Well, and then you add all the dimensions within the dimension.
Right.
It's really.
Yeah. So this is really heavy duty stuff that only in the future will it be possible to understand Tzimtzum, that brought empty space into beings. Empty space came about through the Tzimtzum, where, as it were, he limited his godliness, contracted it from there, and it was though in that place there is no godliness. The absolute truth is that godliness must nevertheless be present there, for nothing can exist without his giving it life. So it goes. So God is eternal, infinite in time and space in his nature. Let's see, anything that will not be realized, essentially, unless it is preceding by something infinite, will not be realized and cannot come to exist. And so it goes. In the realization was accidental. There was this chaos originally that led to all kinds of things, but the chaos sorted itself out by basically splitting into more and more universes is one explanation, until there was no more chaos. And if we look at what's going on, there's no grounds for any of this to happen, because no one has any idea, quite frankly, what in the world are the mechanisms that are causing this to happen. They're dealing with things that are, there's no framework here that you could come up with. Western science hasn't advanced enough to come up with anything to describe this. That's why I think what Ron did by going back to the start of this universe is a really good starting point in this discussion. But to get the whole thing going is what Tzimtzum is about, and that's that's even harder to understand. Most of the things that physicists do when they're dealing with things like string theory is they propose experiments that say, now we're going to restart the universe. And that's like impossible. How do you restart the universe? But it's how they come to grips with this. So that's what Ron did, but he actually observed what was going on in doing that. But here we're going back to how do we go from nothing to the first set of universes, which is even more inconceivable. So if there, I'm just trying to see, is there anything here we want to hit on? There's a lot of, I'll just say, philosophical mumbo jumbo here. The fact that God is infinite, the world and the universe are finite, the center of God is not possible because of his infinite essence. And so forth. So this is out of the Zohar. This is a direct quote. So you can see it's a little opaque reading the Zohar. Before creation, before Tzimtzum, God filled all space. God alone existed. And then after Tzimtzum, God played with the Torah. His wisdom was his only delight. And he was the knower, the knowledge, and the known. So God knows about himself. His knowledge of himself is precise. His wisdom, that is the Torah, is in our image and likeness. And so it goes. So creation is a projection of his wisdom. The cosmos and microcosm are equivalent in correspondence and in relation to God and his wisdom. God is eternal, unknowable only from the point of view of immense omnipresence, which he knows we cannot embrace with our mind, the eternal immensity of this. So the four central themes that Rabbi Luria introduced into the Kabbalah Tzimtzum, the shattering of the vessels, or Sephirot, Hakelim, Tikkun, the repair, and Partzifum. And so they're all interrelated, continuing processes. The Tzimtzum is the first process to create in this empty space. The Hakalim describes how after Tzimtzum, God created these vessels in empty space. God began to pour his light into the vessels. They weren't strong enough to hold the power, and they shattered. That's the Sephirot. The Tikkun is the repairing or getting rid of the chaos. And then the God's light were carried down with the shards of the shattered vessels. And then we go back and start over again. So I'm just looking to see. So Luria really united the cosmology of the Kabbalah with the practice of Jewish ethics, and made ethics and traditional Judaism the means by which God allows humans to complete and perfect the material world through living the precepts of a traditional Jewish life. I mean, one of the problems with the Torah, though, is it talks about this covenant between Moses, representing the Jews, and the God, and the Jews are in fact the chosen ones. But this individual, Jesus of Nazareth, appeared, and he ended up appearing to announce that the first covenant with the Jews as the chosen one was going to end with the destruction of the temple, which happened in 70 AD. The Jews went on a revolt, and the Romans came in and completely flattened Jerusalem, killed all the men, sold all the women and children into slavery. That's the end of Jerusalem. And so that was the end of the first covenant. It was the second covenant, the one with Jesus of Nazareth, where he did this for all people. So now the Jews were not the special ones. Everybody, all humans, were who he had died for, and had compassion for and love for. And so that's what we should take away from this. There's this as above, so below, this notion of a holographic principle, that everything occurs on the same scale everywhere. If there's this chaos that occurred, well, it led to multiple universes, but they're all stable now, end of story. And everything seems to be cut out of the same universal cloth. We are truly one, and all is one. And so with that, I think we're done here. There's some readings in the Wikipedia for you to take a look at, and there's an actual website here, and other things. So that is what we got for tonight. The Buddha didn't, in the Abhidhamma, the Buddha didn't go off to explore like the start of the universe. He was focused, much more on
Where we are
the Four
today.
Noble Truths, and on the Eightfold Way. Or am I missing something? And the notion of reincarnation.
Well, I'd like to sort of represent where Ron was coming from. Like, we talked about a lot of things. I mean, there's two kinds of mind. There's view and seeing. Now, seeing is where, like, Ron was able to have awareness of many levels of the universe, including, electrons and so on. but that's actual seeing, that's awareness. Viewing is concept. And also in his mind, like in his experience of seeing and awareness, God did not exist.
Right.
There is no God.
Right.
Like he saw all these levels of the universe. But you have to kind of understand that when Ron looked at these electrons and subatomic particles and all that, there's a tremendous amount of nonverbal understanding that becomes present in the mind when you go into that kind of deep meditation, that kind of awareness. So like, basically, I mean, Bart, you were able to kind of channel him to kind of answer some of the fundamental questions of modern physics, which was fantastic. But I'm
Do you
just trying.
think that the Kabbalists believe in a personal God?
No, there is no God.
Well, I'm talking about the Kabbalistic perspective. Do you think there is a personal God in their perspective?
No.
Okay, good, because there isn't.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of,
All of that is God. God is
Yeah.
everything. Everything is God.
I mean, it's a neat explanation of trying to explain to the mind. I mean, I can see how everyone got there. But that isn't actually what the experience is when you get into the deeper levels of meditation and awareness. You actually perceive levels of reality in the mind. And it's more like Ron's experience. It goes forever, I think you have, with Ron, from your perspective, it was fantastic that he was able to look at subatomic particles. But there's other levels of awareness that he had that was, for me,
Right.
even more remarkable,
Sure.
And in terms of reincarnation, like there's no mention of the bardo. The bardo is
Right.
between when you die and when you're reborn. There's a whole level of reality there,
Right. Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, all I've ever tried to do with Ron was to put it into a more conventional framework and popularize it so that the best and the brightest, meaning not me, could actually go in these directions, because they've spent 50 years going nowhere.
Yeah. So with the kind of awareness that he could say, no, that doesn't, but how it happens this way.
Right.
Right. But that's awareness, that's seeing, it's not concepts. It's not now you can move it into concepts, into trying to understand it. But the actual experience is awareness of the levels of consciousness.
Right.
And he was amazing. In terms of awareness, the thing that really impressed me about Ron is that he could look at anyone's mind and he could read the karma of the previous lives, especially the most recent ones. Because that's a composition of the mind that's
and the past lives.
Yeah. Where's this God thing, And one of the things that really throws me off about this, the Kabbalah and all the kind of the Middle Eastern concept of reality is they have this concept is that the sin blames all women for all the problems that man has. I mean,
actually,
like, what's that?
Actually, what it appears has happened was the Torah was rewritten.
Right.
Initially, women were equal to men and were doing things, and then some men, who knows who they were, went in and rewrote the Torah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My view is that somewhere in the Middle East there was a social religious movement where they wanted to control people by calling them all sinners and
Right, right.
all that. It's just like,
No,
wow.
and the same thing happened with Jesus of Nazareth. Here he had these 12 male disciples, but he had Mary Magdalene, and she had her group of disciples who were even closer to him than the males were. But they got no press whatsoever in the Gospels. They're like written out of it, like, oh yeah, there's some women here. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. This one pope in the 1100s said that Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. I mean, he just made it up. He just fabricated the whole thing. She was probably, incredibly educated and, could run circles around any of the male disciples. So.
Well, Kabbalistically, they refer to Bina and Malkut as the two Marys.
Right.
There's the supernal Mary, which is part of the absolute, and there's the incarnate or physicalized Mary, which is actually the created world. That's the least of the tree. That's not.
Yeah.
That's not the totality. That's not what they're really talking
about.
Yeah,
you have to go look at this stuff closely and see what gets swept under the rug. And I'm sure if we had access to the Vatican Library, which we don't, there'd be a lot of clarifications of all of this stuff that they don't want out. So that's what we've done for tonight. That's
okay.
Our survey on Kabbalah.
The biggest sin in Kabbalah would be to believe in a personified God, because that's a separation, and it's idolatry.
Right.
They were really against idolatry.
Yeah.
And any image is a reduction of the absolute, and that's really a sin, but that's a state of separation. That's all.
Yeah.
It's nothing to be punished. It has its own built-in punishment.
Yeah, and Jesus of Nazareth, he talked about the way. There was no symbol there. It was just I want to teach you the way, how to find the right way.
It wasn't a cross.
No.
More likely a circle.
Yeah. So we've got, I'm trying to think, we've got 3, let's see. Next week is the 30th. Then we've got 2 more in June, 3 more classes, and then we would shut down. So you've got anything in particular you want to see covered in those 3, just give it some thought and we'll see what we can do. We've got materials for all 3, but if there's something you'd like to see, we'll make sure that we put it in there.
I just found a printout of Ron's book today, and like loose leaf notebook size paper. I guess it was a draft.
Well, I have it all. I have it all on my computer where I've.
Right.
We had many emails. I went through all the emails because he had these drawings that he made.
Beautiful.
Which he's a very good artist, and the drawings. I mean, to just sit there and have the concentration to be able to look at this stuff in the microcosm, and or also macrocosm is what he did, to look at it and be able to do these. I mean, that took a lot of time. A lot of time.
Bring it back in some way that you can kind of, have some understanding, some translation.
Well, in terms of meditation, it's an incredible ability to focus. It's like the awareness of where you can zero in consciously and deliberately. And, he had that ability. It's fantastic.
Yeah, no, and like I encouraged him when he was going back to the start of this universe. I had him, look around for. I said there should be 2 Higgs bosons there, one for matter and one for dark matter, and he hadn't realized that. And then he said, "Oh wait, here's one, and then here's the other." Okay, and they're only there for a billionth of a second.
Yeah.
So if you didn't know what to look for, you're going to miss that. It's gone.
Yeah. I mean, it did him a big favor by having them focus on some of these issues, and he was able to give you really direct answers. It was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the most significant thing that came out of this particular area was the fact there was no bang, there was a bounce.
Right.
And that, therefore, what I came to the conclusion, since I asked him repeatedly, where's the nuclear fireball? Where's all the hot plasmas? Where's all the, and there's this, period of, it's maybe 300, 400,000 years till things finally cool off enough that you can actually have space itself. It just filled up with plasma because it's so hot. There's nothing but charged particles flying all over the place. And it finally cools off enough so that you can actually see through space and you can actually see light occurring. You couldn't see anything before that. It's just a nuclear fireball. And so I said, where is it? And he says, there's nothing there like that. Okay. So the only conclusion I could come to, therefore, is that in this multiverse where you have all these other universes that are expanding and contracting all the time, okay, our universe must have hit another universe, okay? That's the simplest explanation, because when that happens, all bets are off as to what's happening.
Yeah, I think one of the amazing things that he brought forward was that there's all these other dimensions of reality.
Right.
Like we think we're living in reality, but we're in, a small part of
right.
Right. Well, in a sense, you can conclude from that a lot of the explanations rest in this awareness about these other dimensions.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like they're going to be a whole different universe in these different dimensions. We have no idea. We don't have a dicky bird of a clue what's going on at all.
Right.
What 90% of the universe. And he pointed out that that's what's there,
Yeah, and because you have so many of them, all possible things are going to happen. Some of them are going to be completely sterile. Others are going to be teeming with all kinds of life. Others are going to be, in between these two extremes, whatever. There's going to be just this incredible diversity, distribution across all these different universes. And, it just happens that we're in one where we can talk about this. But the one that hit us might have been one of these, totally sterile universes where nothing was going on, and it just happened to smash into us, and that created this remnant bang that has been detected. But everything says that our universe is not billions of years old, but trillions of years old. And oh, by the way, something happened 13.8 billion years ago that created this residual background noise. It's a standard thing that happens all the time where you have data. There's all kinds of data that there's this microwave background radiation that's there. No one's disputing that, and they're doing finer and finer measurements on it. The problem is how you interpret what that meant. And people immediately jumped to Genesis and said, oh, God said, let there be light, and there was light. And this bang occurred. Well, that's one explanation, but it doesn't match what Ron saw. And
that's right.
One thing you learn in physics, one good observation is worth 1,000 theories.
Yeah. Well, one of the real interesting things that really impressed me, and Ron was very impressed by it as well, and that is electrons expand,
right,
and then contract, and they gather information and they act on it.
Right.
I mean, that's
right.
That's
truly that's the conundrum of what we said with this double slit experiment.
Yeah.
It explains what happened.
Yeah.
And people have suggested something like, but Ron saw it. Okay.
Yeah.
You were with him and he saw it. Forget what you think. Observations are what it's all about.
That's right. Yeah.
Another way of talking about the Tzimtzum?
Yeah, it's another way of talking about Tzimtzum, that all of this was created there, and this is it's going through all of this interactions of scanning of all of the, because remember, this information isn't just on the outside of an electron, it's coding the compartments of all space compartments.
Yeah.
Every piece of space that you could think of. So you know, when the Tzimtzum occurred, all of this information was dumped out there. And I'm just asking myself,
But it's occurring continually.
yeah,
also.
yeah, and it continually evolves too. It's
Yeah.
it's an amazing piece of artistry. It's a Picasso times 1 million in terms of coming up with this sort of structure that will govern all this and not have the wheels come off. And it's the fact that it scales to the sizes of universes, many universes, is amazing.
Well, one of the things about that communication that, you know, he described about the electron. Well, that's everywhere. Everything has that.
Right.
Yeah, so that means the whole universe is in union with itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know?
Every electron is coded this
Figure that
way.
one out. you know?
Every compartment of space, all of these subquarks that he saw that were there, everything, it's everywhere. And yet, you know, ultimately the rules have to be simple enough. You know, I mean, this makes any computer that we've ever made look like you know, Tinker Toys.
That's right. Yeah.
This is the storage and the processing capability and the input output that goes with this is inconceivable. It's not even you know, we haven't even figured out how the scanning takes place. We've never measured it. Undoubtedly, it's right in front of us, but we have no idea what it is.
I tell you what we need. What we need are 50 bronze talking to one another.
Right. And they're cross-checking one another too.
Yeah. You know, they're all going to see something more or different. And you know.
Yeah. No, that would be a great thing to happen. Yeah, in the
It's out there somewhere.
He spent a lot of time training. You know, so you've got to get people that are willing to, you know, have the aptitude and the willingness for the hard work to train. So
one of the things you have to look at, though, is that reason why Ron had all that ability was because he was a very old soul. He's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
You know,
no, he said he was on this other solar system and the star went nova and he was just drifting in space for eons and then he landed on Earth and the rest was history.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
I wonder where he ended up next.
Right. Where he's incarnated already. So we'll see.
Oh yeah, he's off to a new lifetime.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll see you next week. Have a good weekend. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.